Good evening, everyone. So I was on my walk less than an hour ago, and I requested that the Arcturians give me information that they never have before. And to say that this information was compelling and enthralling would be an understatement. So I've never before received information like this, and it's quite of a codex, meaning it's quite hefty. So I'm going to do my best, because we have a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to do my best to concisely disassemble this information and then move on to the next. Okay? Now, the first thing they said was that the days, this is precisely what they said, the days of energetically sustaining others are over. The days of energetically sustaining others are over. So that would fall under the categories of coddling, spoon feeding, enabling. Those days are long gone. Now, this was the piece that really, what was an eyebrow raiser for me. And I have to go into the details. They said that in an optimal timeline, what they would have preferred, which is not going to be the case, this would have been the ideal timeline, would have been to stop being so heavily involved, meaning fighting fire, because you can't fight fire with fire. Stop being so heavily involved in the unconscious game that's playing out, that's enacting on our world. The ideal timeline would have been to go inward. And anytime you would have had that urge to state your case, to convert other people, to advocate for a cause. Instead, you would have brought yourself back inside, meaning diverted your attention back inside. And there would have been casualties on this planet. Like, say you let it all go. Okay? We're not going to mess with any of the dark stuff that's going on in this world anymore. We're just going to fully focus on going inward. What they showed me is that would have wiped the system clean. So there would have been casualties, there would have been deaths, there would have continued to be violence, but ultimately that would have ended a cycle. Can you see it? Because I saw it really clearly as they painted the picture. It was like, if all of you stop entrenching yourselves or being in this battlefield, trying to fight fire with fire, meaning unconscious with unconscious, it may not have been as rewarding as it relates to your soul mission, but you guys would have wiped that hard drive. That would have been the ideal timeline. And then I said, but why? Like, people would have kept getting raped, kept getting molested. They said because by continuing to be down each other's throats, be at each other's necks, what you're doing is you're giving birth to unnecessary timelines. So they're like offshoots, or you're spawning subsets of the disharmony that's already on your world. So let me use a practical example. And I know this is like really like heavy information, but I'm up to the task. I've been working with them for a while. So say that you feel like there's an injustice going on in the world, right? Through your lens, through your prism, you're like, this is unjust, and I'm going to fight for this cause. I'm going to champion this cause. If you're not doing it from a place of alignment, which most humans don't have that wherewithal, if they did, that'd be a different story altogether. But because people still have very narrow ideas, concepts, views, most of the time they don't successfully advocate for something with equanimity. So what ends up happening is they end up condemning others, which really doesn't solve the actual conundrum. So they end up barking at other people because they're so passionate about this cause, and that's wonderful, right? So again, this video is not to make anything good or bad. It was more of an analogy that they brought in. It wasn't an analogy. They said that would have been the highest timeline, but it is an analogy in the sense that it wouldn't have been realistic in this current time-space continuum. Okay? So by barking at each other, by throwing daggers at each other, we end up birthing subset timelines that still carry the frequency of violence, of aggression, of condemnation. So what that does is it creates a whole new cycle that could last hundreds of years, where there actually ends up being more casualties, more rape, more violence, because when someone's feeling judged, guess what happens? You exacerbate the situation. When someone feels judged, they end up killing. They end up doing things like that. So the Arcturians said the ideal timeline would have been to just let it all go. Whatever needs to play out will play out. And anytime you have the urge or the impulse, that automatic response of interjecting yourself, of interceding, and instead inverting your gaze and going back inside, if every human did that, we would have wiped clean the hard drive. And we would have put an end to all of these subsets, to all of these offshoots. I saw them as offshoots, or like, if you can imagine procreating billions of new timelines because we're down each other's throats. And then those timelines, they get prolonged, they get prolonged, they get prolonged. And they could last hundreds upon hundreds of years. So the Arcturians said it would have been better for you guys to accept what's going on, to learn how to master your mind, to bring these technologies online. The Arcturians are very adept when it comes to going inside and crystallizing your DNA and installing this higher dimensional software in your DNA. So when I work with them, I'm installing stuff in my feet, in my heart, like it's all over my body. You feel like you're compressing energy within your body. And it's as though you're installing this very high dimensional software, this very high dimensional technology. And that's outside of the context of what we're talking about right now. It's, but it goes into psychokinesis. It goes into all this other stuff that we're not there yet. But how it affects us now is that it can help you have vitality. It can youth you. It can do a lot for you. It can revitalize the cells in your body, regenerate your DNA, so on and so on. Anyways, so the Arcturians are adept healers, and they work with holograms. So when you imagine something, what you're imagining holds a frequency. Okay, so that frequency within your own system lights up, and then you can work with that energy. So it's a whole thing. Anyways, so then they said the next best thing was to, if you will, the fallback option was to then wipe unconsciousness. So there was an agreement that was made in the cosmos by many councils, whereby the unconsciousness at large, people's unconscious behaviors, those ego constructs, the guilt, the shame. Guilt is a big one. We'll talk about that. The guilt, the shame, the fear, all of that is officially been wiped. So we didn't choose option 1, obviously, but option 2 is a done deal. So any unconsciousness that's still playing out on the world stage is really just unconsciousness that humans are self-inflicting and self-imposing. But they're going to be forced to release it now, like in the coming months. This was a decision that was made a few months ago. They called it the big shift. So I almost titled this The Big Shift. But I'm learning to accept that I have a soul contract with the Arcturians. I've been in contact with them for a long time, and they told me there are 23 Arcturian beings. They told me that there are about 2,000 beings in Arcturus. 2,055 is what they told me, but that I'm working with 23 Arcturian beings. And as a skeptic, I'm a Virgo. You know, we're very skeptical, but we're also very esoteric. We're very intuitive. But what allows us to be very discerning is that we, even if you're my best friend, I might size you up. I might go, what energies are around you? What critters are crawling around you? Because it's all about integrity of the message. All right. So then they said that's why a lot of people are kicking the bucket right now. They're dying. And I thought this was so profound. They said, you guys have been sustained by unconscious programs which have their own energy, their own intelligence. I mean, the apps on your phone, they have their own intelligence. Unconscious programming can sustain you to some degree. If you're always complaining, playing the victim, that sustains you. It's not the highest quality, the highest grade energy that you can nourish yourself with, but it can keep you alive. So they said that humans were being sustained by unconscious programming. And that the reason why people are dying left and right now, and the reason why you, yes, you, might be devoid of vigor, of zest. Maybe you're feeling uninspired. Maybe you're feeling unmotivated. Things are quite uneventful. The reason that is because you no longer can rely or hook up to the oxygen tank of the unconscious. So they said that we're now going to have to solely depend on ourselves to regenerate our energy or to generate energy from within, meaning hooking up to higher dimensional fields from inside and then generating energy that way. So if you've been feeling lately, I need to get my, one second, I need to get my clock. Won't be long. Okay, 1 second. Okay. So, if you've been feeling like you're down in the pits, things are uneventful, like you don't have that spark of creativity, it is because your own unconscious has been wiped clean. So, if you're tempted to nap or to sleep longer than usual, then do that, because your system is going through, it's undergoing a massive overhaul right now. This does not mean that you're low vibrational by any means. I napped all week last week. It's that the big shift is here. There was an agreement to wipe out, like a hard drive, to wipe out all unconscious programming. And they said that people are dying because they were so unconscious. Maybe they were couch potatoes, or they never questioned life. That's not the case for everyone, but I'm just going to go with that right now. They were so unconscious that there's no way they would have been able to be up to the task of awakening themselves out of their slumber. Because remember, when you awaken, you have to have the capacity, the gigabytes within your system to hold light. Unconsciousness is the absence of light. You're like an ostrich with your head buried in the sand, and you don't want to look. You don't want to look at what's around you. You want to be in the dark. So say that you decide that you only want to live a spiritual life, and you decide to abandon your apartment without terminating your lease. You're going unconscious, because when you come back from that trip, you're going to have a whole pile of bills to pay. You see? That's because you're not wanting to look at what's going on in your life. So that's the unconscious. Think of the unconscious as powerlessness, darkness, because it's devoid of light, and within that, under that umbrella, you have victimhood, you have guilt, you have shame, you have fear, you have all of that stuff that keeps people anchored in this anxiety, stress-inducing state. So, one of the main programs that we are uninstalling right now is guilt. So now we're going to segue into the next point. And this is kind of like an energy update. Especially this week, and you've probably noticed this past week, you're being called to really establish boundaries. And I'll explain in a moment how what we discussed ties into this. So, for instance, for myself, I've been going out every afternoon and reading. And I'm not a reader. I've never been an avid reader, but I've taken it upon myself to just enjoy my quietude. I've been taking a book out. And I found that every day this week, someone will either stop me and be like, "Oh my God, are you feel good?" So I'm not saying that to like boast, but that's like factually happening every day. And so I usually am gracious, and I will spend time with people, like 10 minutes. But I found that lately there's something that keeps interrupting what I'm trying to do. And so I try not to judge it. I just go, okay, cool. Like, I'm one of those people, like, if something approaches me, I'm like, oh, the universe is sending me an upgrade. Let me receive this upgrade. That's how my mind is wired. So I never look at anything as like mistakenly or accidentally happening. I don't believe in coincidence. But what they told me was, because they've wiped the unconscious, if you're not standing firmly in your truth, so for me, it'd be like, hey, so 15 minutes has passed, that's fine. But if they keep talking my ears off, it's like, hey, I really want to get back to my book, right? And I didn't do that on purpose this week because I knew I was supposed to study the field. I knew that. So I didn't leave like, oh, darn it, I didn't get to read my book. I didn't leave with that attitude because I knew that I needed to study the current energies. So, if you don't stand in your truth, if you don't live and speak from your truth now, it's going to cost you. If you do stand in your truth, it's going to cost them. Because if someone isn't able to, tell that you're busy doing something, there's nothing wrong with talking 5-10 minutes, but then they'll be like, yo, get back to what you're doing. I didn't mean to bother you, whatever. That's their unconscious playing out. Okay? So if you don't step in your truth, and I'm a master at being in my truth, so sometimes I learn by, I don't want to say by not being in my truth, but I learn by switching paradigms or switching matrices and going, let's observe from this angle. That I do that a lot. So my findings this week were that if you speak your truth and the person is unconscious, it's going to cost them in the sense that it's going to create a ripple effect and they're going to have to live with that rejection. It's not a rejection, it's actually an honoring. Like I'm honoring you by honoring myself. I'm busy right now, right? You're honoring them because you're honoring yourself. And that's the most potent, the finest frequency you can offer them, whether they like it or not. Because whenever you honor your truth, it creates a chain reaction that is for the benefit of everyone who encounters the frequency that you contributed. So for instance, let's say I had said like, hey, you're great, but I'm in the middle of something right now. Then they might have walked away feeling rejected because that's their own unconscious being mirrored back to them, so echoing in their brain. And they might call someone and be like, oh, Phil's like a real douchebag. And whoever's on the receiving end of that phone call, it's that frequency of serving them. It's the highest frequency because it was your highest truth. So you're not always cognizant of the ripple effect, but it's happening. Now, did it cost me by sitting with many people and not reading my book? I would say that if I wasn't doing it consciously, I would say yes, it did cost me. Because what I wanted was to enjoy quiet time. But it didn't cost me in the sense that I knew what I was doing. So I was willing to make that, to pay. I was willing to pay to kind of observe the field. But it did cost me because I went there with the intent of reading and I didn't get to read. So that cost me. So what the guides are saying is that if you're not in your truth, it's going to cost you because then you're going to build resentment. You're going to go, darn it, I didn't get to read. You're going to have that resentment bubble up in you. Because every unconscious program has to be nipped now. It has to be deleted. It's already been deleted in the quantum field. It's already been deleted. But now we all have to do our due diligence to wipe it out of our own system. And guilt is a big one. That's what the Arcturians said, because you might guilt yourself into thinking, Are they going to think I'm a bad person if I'm not warm, if I'm not welcoming, if I'm not personable, if I'm not friendly? Are they going to think I'm unfriendly? That's a guilt program, because you're never unfriendly if you're doing something for yourself and you're having your own quiet time. You're never unfriendly. So I needed to say that to you right now, because this is one of the overarching themes that we're dealing with at this juncture. Honoring yourself is always the answer. And if someone walks away and despises you for it, or maybe they're reactionary, or maybe they feel a certain type of way, it's not even theirs at this point, because it's already been wiped. It's just unconsciousness that's kind of like looming, and they're going to have to play out whatever dramas they need to play out until it's burned off completely. And then they'll eventually come to their senses and be like, I think I was being a little judgy. But believe me when I tell you, they said this is happening at a warp speed. Like this process of moving into these higher bandwidths is happening at light speed now. Okay. There's another message I wanted to share. I took a couple of notes. Let me see what else I wrote. So the days of energetically sustaining others are over. Well, yeah, right? Because this is about you being sovereign now. It's about you being you, your true self. Your true self. You can't give people energy anymore. And you did that because, again, we were being run by unconscious programs. So we did that. We passed that energy around. So that unconscious program isn't available for people anymore. That's why you can't sustain people energetically. I didn't make a lot of notes. I just wanted to write this. Okay. There's another message that I wanted to share that is very much along those lines. The guy said to me yesterday, when you are not sovereign, so follow this attentively, when you are not sovereign, the things that you magnetically draw to yourself, when you're not sovereign, meaning you're not self-sufficient, meaning you're not autonomous, meaning you still need something from the outside world, meaning you still play by other people's rules because you need something from them. Being sovereign is being fully self-sufficient on all cylinders, physical, financial, mental, emotional. When you don't have those, you depend on other people. Oh, I'm living with my boyfriend because I don't make my own money. That means you're not sovereign. Factually speaking, that just means you're not sovereign. We are here to reclaim our sovereignty on all levels. So when you're not sovereign, the things that you attract to yourself are probably not going to be sovereign either. Because believe me when I tell you, someone who's sovereign won't approach you. They won't. If they do, they'll just say, hi, have a great day. So you're going to attract a match. You're going to attract someone who's not sovereign. Okay, but that's not the point of this. What you attract is going to be for you to reclaim your sovereignty. So for instance, someone walks up to you, they approach you, they say, you know, the weather's really ugly outside today. It's not pleasant. In that moment, the majority of people who are not sovereign will say, you know, you're right. You're right. Because they don't want to offend that person. So they're still caught in that victimhood. Oh my God, this is my opportunity to connect with another human. So I'll just say you're right. But that's not really your truth. So if you feel like you're lacking sovereignty right now, everything that you attract this week, everything that you magnetize, is an opportunity for you to recall your power. to remember who and what you are. So that person that says, the weather is dreadful outside, if you say, I'm actually quite enjoying this. So you don't have to be abrasive. You don't have to be offensive. You can very respectably say, I actually really like the weather today. In that moment, boom, you're going to retrieve a fragment of your soul that went missing in action, that went MIA. Think of these fragments of your soul as your personal power. But it's not just one frequency, it's many frequencies. And sometimes you give frequencies away, you give your power away. And so these fragments of your soul depart. And they go on their respective journey, so there is value to that. But if it's not serving you, then the goal is to retrieve those fragments, right? I came up with a term a few years ago that was like, I consciously fractalize sometimes. So this week, I consciously fractalized to scour the field, to collect data. So when you consciously fragment or consciously fractalize, you don't end up building resentment because you know it's just a case study. You know that you're just studying your environment. Now, I found that the predominant energy this week was and is and will be for the coming weeks these incoming energies, people being drawn to you. It's like moths to a flame. And this is happening all over the globe right now. You're going to attract total strangers to you. You're going to attract exes to you. You're going to attract all kinds of things. And if you're not sovereign, utilize it as an opportunity to speak your truth. And just like that, bloop, that fragment's going to airdrop back into your soul. Okay? Now, so you got the part. If you're not sovereign, what you attract is for you to reclaim your sovereignty. If you are sovereign, though, what you attract is for that person, it's not for you. Because when you're sovereign, you love your alone time. When you're sovereign, you kind of want to be left alone. You don't mind saying hi to people, hey, salute. But you don't really have a desire. For instance, if you're reading a book, you don't really have a desire to have your peace disturbed, right? Because you're sovereign. You're hanging out with your guides, your angels. And so what you attract, it won't be sovereign. It won't be someone sovereign. If someone walks up to you, you'll only tell if they're sovereign if they understand and respect that you're having your alone time. Hey, I see you. I see that you're enjoying your time. Take care. If someone keeps talking your ears off, though, they're not sovereign. They're trying to fill a void. They're trying to fill a blank through you, which you can't do. Now, something else to bear in mind is that you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Meaning, whether you're really polite and you let them hang out for an hour, which is it's going to cost you, or you say, hey, I'm in the middle of something right now, but thank you for saying hi, take care. They're going to receive it and interpret it how they choose to receive it because they're only going to interpret it according to their level of non-sovereignty. So we color our experiences based on the state of consciousness that we're residing within, or the state of consciousness that we're holding or that we're indwelling. So for instance, there is nothing that you can possibly do to ease whatever pain they have or to energetically sustain them. There's nothing you can do. Because the way that the narrow mind works is that it has all these filters. And I've talked about this before. If you wear yellow goggles, the sky's not going to be blue, honey. Honestly, don't blue. It won't be blue. That's because you're seeing life, you're decorating or coloring your experiences according to your state of consciousness. So even if you're the most angelic being, that person is still going to interpret it through their prism, through their yellow goggles. So if you're honoring yourself in that moment and you say, hey, I'm just having quiet time, but I'm so glad we got to connect for 10 minutes. Take care, I'm going to get back to my book now. They might take offense to that because they're operating within the confines of their mind. They don't see in that moment like maybe you're busy, you're occupied, right? They see it, but I'm unconscious, but I'm not sovereign, and I need something from you. And I almost titled this video Keepers of the Light, because right now, if you've been working on upping your brightness, I love that, you're upping your brightness. You're focused within yourself. That's mastery, by the way. We'll eventually get to a place where we see each other, we bow to each other, boom, you're on your way. You know what I mean? So if you're busy working on your brightness, you're upping your brightness, you're upping your game, you're going to have a lot of people who are not sovereign. Again, the sovereign people will see you, I acknowledge you, I honor you, peace. You're going to attract a lot of people who are lacking sovereignty, who are still in that unconscious program that's already been wiped quantumly, that's already been wiped in the quantum field. And those people are going to try to fish for something that you can't give them. Because if you give it to them, you're energetically sustaining them. And that program's already been wiped. So what avenue should you take in that moment? Easy. What is your truth in that moment? That truth is going to vary from moment to moment. What is your truth, your ultimate truth in that moment? And then you have to fully trust that that's going to create the perfect chain reaction for all souls involved in the interaction of the frequency that you dished out, in the interaction of the frequency that you pumped out. And if you don't choose your absolute truth, then you're not lending the finest frequency. You're not. What you're doing is you're still attempting to keep people afloat via the unconscious, because you feel guilty that if you're not, quote unquote, polite, they're going to take it bad. You see what I mean? So all of the unconscious programs have been wiped clean. That's what the Arcturians said. And they said there might still be a splash of it in the collective because humans are still imposing it upon themselves, but they're being forced to clear it out now. They're being forced to unwire themselves. They're being forced to disentangle from that very unhealthy and dysfunctional web of unconscious energy. Okay? Whew, this is a lot of information. I want to go into one more topic. I kept hearing, and by the way, I got all of this in less than 15 minutes because I don't meditate and ask for advice or ask for downloads. When I'm meditating, I'm in my wizardry, okay? I'm in my sorcery. And at the end, I go, hey guys, what message do you have, right? So it happens very fast. It's a huge codex of information. And when you start to work with extra-dimensional beings, the information is a lot more substantial. It can be a lot more difficult to decode, to disassemble, a lot more. Because it's multidimensional, it's cosmic information. It's not like dealing with a person who's going through a breakup and you're just tending to their needs. It's a lot of information coming in at once. All right, so this is the last thing I kept hearing, contagion, contagion, contagion. And I was like, COVID? Contagion? Contagious COVID? No. They said awakening is contagion. Awakening is contagious. Awakening is contagious. And so often, we try to awaken the people around us, failing to realize that when you try to awaken other people, that is still an aspect of yourself that's unawakened. Because you're stepping out of your own alignment to shake someone awake, wake up, and that's unconscious on your part. And because that program of unconscious has been cleared, that's not going to work anymore. It's never really worked, but it definitely won't work now. It's going to ricochet instantaneously. This can take the form of that person lashing out at you. It can take the form of that person pulling away from you, because there's no more lag as it relates to this ascension process. No more lag. So awakening is contagious. How so? I'll use a very simple example, which is very basic. If through my ascension I decide to start implementing boundaries, which I did when I first awakened, because I was like, okay, I need to shut out all this conditioning, my family, all of it. I need to shut the whole thing out. I need to drown out the noise so that I can reconnect to my internal technology, to source. I don't want any influence around me. I'm setting boundaries. Leave me alone. This is me rediscovering who I am. This is me retracing my footsteps back to the truth of who I am. So you need to set boundaries. And at first you might be a little harsh with them. You know, you're a little rough around the edges. And then you learn how to be more gracious. You learn how to keep your edges soft, but you're still in your truth. So you don't actually have to exert any force. I feel like that's where I'm at now. I don't really exert force. I'm very in my truth, and you can feel when it's truth. You know, people, even whether it's dating apps or friends, and I even said this to a friend yesterday, I said, hey, I just want to let you know I'm not a texter. So whether I'm on a dating app and someone asks my number, or whether it's a friend that texts me, whom I haven't heard from in a while, I very respectfully say, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm not a texter. I'm not into that. And they don't take it personally, because they can sense that it's my truth. And it is my truth because it's been anchored in, because it is my truth. So it is my truth. So that's why people don't take things personally, and they don't get sent into a defensive posture when you're just voicing your truth. But at first that can be a little wobbly, right? It's a little rocky because you're still trying to integrate your truth. So when you first awaken, because you're afraid of speaking your truth, then you usually get that reflective response of, why? Blah, 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 blah. Because that you kind of have to see your internal dramas playing out externally. You have to see what it is that you're dismantling from within. You have to see what you're deconstructing. And then as you start to settle into your being and you get comfortable with your truth, then it's not something that's personal. It just is what it is. Like I say, it's not personal, it's just vibrational. So, what was I saying? I was saying that I lost my train of thought. We were talking about, yes, awakening is contagious. So if you set boundary, thank you. Oh my God, I would have totally forgotten that. Brain fart. If you set boundaries with people, they don't have a choice but to change. They don't have a choice to awaken. Because if you tell your family, don't talk to me for a while, right? And I'm not saying be like that. Don't do that. But if you set a boundary with anyone in your life, a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, hey, I don't like when you do that. I'm going to ask that you stop doing that. You're honoring your awakening path. You're honoring your path of higher consciousness. So that is contagious. They don't have a choice but to respect you. So they're going to think more. Oh, I'm about to say this. Let me not do that. Let me backtrack. They're going to be more alert. They're going to be more conscious, or they're going to fall away. So, but from that perspective, that's still contagious, because your awakening caused them to fall away, and because you're not a component in their life anymore, that's going to change the fabric of their DNA anyway. So awakening is contagious. So what I want to say to you is that since we can't energetically sustain people anymore, rather than trying to awaken people, just be the example. Personify the ascension, exemplify the ascension. And this is what the Arcturian said to me today, because I was like, but people are still going to want to awaken their family. And this is what they said. I thought it was so deep. They said, think of it as you're doing your family a solid, or your friends, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or your boss, whatever. You're doing them a solid by honoring what's true for you, because you're preventing them from having a way worse disease in the future. So will your family have that knee-jerk reaction if you start putting up boundaries? Yes, they will. But guess what? That's going to help shift them, and they already have that density in their body anyway, which would have eventually precipitated as a disease. It would have precipitated a disease, cancer, you name it, disease, ailments, illness. So you might as well just pull the plug now and say, I'm going to get back to me, irrespective of how people reply or respond or react. And I'm doing them a solid, because now they have to learn how to energetically sustain themselves. They have to learn how to hook up to source from within. And as they do that, they're going to start eradicating that density that was held in their system that would have eventually resulted as a disease. So I know this was a lot tonight, but my God, I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours and it's only been 46 minutes, but it doesn't feel like 2 hours. It just feels like 2 hours of condensed information. That's all. So I love you guys so much. Please subscribe if you haven't. You're going to see my face pop up now. Just click on that. And if you'd like to donate, which I really appreciate, by the way, because I'm mostly focusing on donation-based work. I don't take as many sessions as I used to. If you'd like to donate, my link is Feel Good Life, so PHIL, feelgoodlife.com/donate. feelgoodlife.com/donate. I do my best to get back to people via email to thank them personally. If it takes a while, just be patient. If I don't, thank you. I do the best that I can with the energy that I have. But I love you guys so much. I will speak to you in another version of the Now. Take care.